Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech.
My name is Tyree Wilson. I'm from Texas Tech, play outside linebacker and defensive end, and I'm in the 2023 NFL Draft.
With the 7th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft.
Pocket now steps up, now thrown down. That's Tyree Wilson.
The Las Vegas Raiders select Tyree Wilson, defensive end, Texas Tech.
My time at Texas Tech, I met a lot of great people, created a lot of great relationships with coaches, players. My goal was to lead Texas Tech better than what I found it, and I felt like I did that. The draft process, training process has been a little different than most. I'm grinding, staying strong and fast. When I was young, I always knew I wanted to be, NFL player, just like a lot of other kids, but you had to separate yourself from the other individuals around you to get to this point. Kind of matured at an early age and, took my training to a different level and took it way more serious. What motivates me is, my family. That's my why. That's why I play the game. They made a lot of sacrifices for me to be here, so I'm going to give it all back to them.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Always appreciate being your first listen every day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan back with you to wrap up the week. And man, wrapping it up, Chris, in an enjoyable way because we now have the first round of the NFL draft in our rear view. We know where the dust settled for Tyree Wilson. We get to be happy for Tyree because still a top 10 pick. I get to be happy because I can also give you some credit as well for something that you kind of called, I think about halfway yesterday. You mentioned the word slide. Wasn't a big one, but was a little against maybe some mock draft projections leading up to the draft, as it wasn't 2, it wasn't 3. Those became really interesting for other reasons, but it was number 7, and he remains a Raider. I believe for the third time, high school and then a red version in Lubbock and now in Las Vegas where he's just looking to win, baby. So congratulations to Tyree Wilson, and always enjoyable, Chris, to see Texas Tech flash across the screen on a big stage.
Yeah, Raider for life, right? I mean, yeah. He had been mocked to LA. To Las Vegas. I think he had been. I had seen everything from Houston at 2, Seattle at 5, Atlanta at 8, Vegas at 7, Arizona been mixed in there. There was, people do these mock drafts and they're like, okay, well, here's a projected trade up and all these things, but it was just pretty clear that I think a real slide would have been if he drops out of the top 10. But that, yeah, and I think his foot, caused some questions for him, and I think that's very fair. I think people are, again, when you're investing a pick in this point in the draft, you just have to mitigate risk. You can't miss, and I don't think there's anything to worry about. I'm not the doctor. I just know he's recovered from a similar injury to turn himself into a really good player. I think, as they said on the telecast last night, I think Joey McGuire indicated this, and I completely agree. If he's not, injured and misses the final 3 games, he's a first-team consensus All-American. I don't think there's any doubt about that based on just kind of, and they, everybody talks about his stat numbers and like look at the sacks. Only had 7. He misses 3 games. I think, didn't he have a sack taken away in the TCU game by some fake face mask that we've all looked at?
Only guy that could stop him all year was wearing a striped shirt.
Yeah, that's right. So, again, I think the sack numbers, again, as long as you kind of understand the context there, but I think he'll be really fun in Vegas because Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, I think, and then you add Tyree to it. I mean, that's a nice. And he's going to be hunting down Patrick Mahomes now.
Yes, he is.
That's the fun part. I mean, I think Mahomes knew it immediately. Was like, "Hey, big fella, take it easy on me."
Yeah, tweeted it.
And I'm here to tell you, Tyree will not. I mean, that's just not how he rolls, man. He's like, hey, you already got your Super Bowl championships. It's time for me to eat whatever I want. And so anyway, but it was fun. He top 10. What a great story, man.
Yeah, really awesome, really unique. I mean, I don't know who else has traveled some kind of similar path to Tyree Wilson. It's amazing to think about the relationships built under Matt Wells to begin this Red Raider experience with Tyree Wilson, and good on Tyree Wilson for finishing it in the biggest way possible, really becoming a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And, I got to say, after he spent about a calendar in West Texas, Chris, you're just thinking, all right, I mean, huge dude, but he transferred, and I shouldn't say transfer. He came as a walk-on technically, but he had a previous spot. Now he's here. So you're always wondering, like, why is that? What does that mean? And I thinking top 10 pick? No. Heading into this season, or kind of about a year and a half ago? No, I was just hoping you got some nice rotational impact in the defensive front. Boy, was I ever wrong. So kudos to Tyree Wilson himself for making that happen. Obviously, a lot of support from everybody around him at Texas Tech and well beyond, family-wise, and all that includes also. But credit to Tyree Wilson for making that happen. Credit to ESPN as well, if you're watching that broadcast, for fulfilling their contractual obligation with the SEC to pump up the Aggie transfer angle over and over and over, which I thought was just rude, particularly to Tyree. We should not judge one another by our worst moments. I know that the NFL draft wants to put the rap sheet up for everybody. Like, I don't know how many players you saw like throw it on the screen. It was like, oh, he was born in Sheboygan. Shout out to Sheboygan again. Second bullet point. He left the scene of a car crash that destroyed a family's home. Whoa. So anyway, proud for Tyree and happy for that family.
Speaking of, well, I don't think this made the broadcast last night, but did you see or have you heard about the video circulating of Sean Payton, the head coach of the Broncos?
Not, but you have my attention.
Might want to check that out.
Okay.
I think, yeah. So if you're out there, yeah, Google that bad boy up. I think it's
not like a Laramie Tunstall. Is there a gas mask involved?
Oh, it's close.
Ooh, okay. Let's just pause the show. Commercial break.
I would say, if this is Sean Payton, and it sure looks like Sean Payton, he's enjoying Colorado. Yeah, I would say. I mean, so
I forgot about that.
Actually, did you see speaking of pictures and things out there? Did you see the picture of Tyree with his mom before the draft?
She stood a little taller than I anticipated when I just thought about his mom.
She is cut up. I mean, like I'm like, hey, no wonder you are a grown ass man, Tyree, because your mom looks like she could whoop some ass. I mean,
yeah. Have you ever met her in person?
I have not. No.
I just thought, man, she has got to be a tall woman, because she was to the shoulder and maybe a little beyond on Tyree, who is
she's
tall
yoked. Man. Yeah, she's just like, I mean, I've met. I was on a flight with Tyree last summer, and he was flying. We were ended up both going to Dallas. I think it was his little brother was meeting them there, and so I think then that's where I think there was some family there. I didn't see her at that point, but he was. It's funny. I was just thinking back like to a year ago, kind of last summer. And I'm just thinking about at the time, and I asked Joey this question. At what point did you think he's going to be a draft pick in the way that he's being talked about now? Like bona fide first rounder. And I think when he got the job and he watched the tail end of the season when Sonny Cumbie was the interim coach, but I think when he watched the bowl game, against Mississippi State, I think that's when Joey said, he goes, that's when I thought, okay, he's going to be a first rounder. I mean, I think if we can keep him on the right track, he stays healthy and all that. But I don't think even Joey thought top 5, top 10. That's just elite territory. I mean, it just is. And
well, in the NFL, Chris, is like that's one of the last great meritocracies in the nation. you make it or you don't make it. And like you said, you can't afford to miss on these types of picks. Yep. I mean, and many do, and you see what happens to them when they do. But the elite company aspect of it, yeah, is really a true statement. And correct me if I'm wrong, man. That Mississippi State game, I remember as the point where I'm like, oh, that's what Wilson looks like whenever he's like dominant, because he was here or there, but that was the kind of the pinnacle of that season for him by far. I mean, he really was dominant in that game. I don't really remember one where he was popping like that in that particular year, but it became a consistent thing, obviously, last season. And yeah, you saw some of the film they were probably trotting out. It didn't always lead to him grabbing the quarterback, but he's blowing up a guard and a tackle on his way to the quarterback being flushed from the pocket, something like that. I mean, his ability to take on those double teams and a chip block from a running back or whatever it might be, chip block ain't going to work on a guy like that.
By the way, just a bone to pick. Maybe he heard us discussing him. I don't know. But for Mel Kiper to try to take a shot at Tyree Wilson via poor offensive line play in the Big 12 Conference,
I didn't hear that.
You're reaching, buddy. You're reaching. You know, it's time to go back and dye the hair up. And kind of, you know, rewatch the tape and the film and whatever you do. We only hear from you once a year. And I thought that's lazy analysis in my, you know, I think Mel Kiper's made a cottage industry out of draft talk and this whole thing. I thought that was a low blow, cheap shot. And I think it's horribly inaccurate. So you know, he's trying to suggest that Tyree's not any good and beat up on very poor offensive tackles, and these are just guys, and there's nobody that's worth. You know, I mean, the Big 12 had 6 players picked in the first round. And anyway, I just thought it was a Bush League comment, and I thought it. I don't know why he made it, but
interesting. I didn't hear that, but yeah, I'd probably agree with you in that sentiment. Mel, go back to the basement with Grandpa Munster and don't come back till we call you 12 months.
Put him in a cage with Bill Tobin.
Hey, pay-per-view? I think you could actually get a few buys on something like that. Coming to the Octagon 2024. Okay, we're going to stick with the draft theme dead ahead. We're going to get to what might be the next wave. Is it going to be Red Raider names that are called this weekend? Are we already on to UFA, undrafted free agent territory? I want to get Chris's perspective on what else might be included for Texas Tech football this 2023 draft weekend. That's coming up next on Locked On Texas Tech. But first, today's episode brought to you by Built Bar. And if you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar, don't want all the calories, I got what you need, buddy. That's Built Bar or Built Puff. What makes them so good? For starters, covered in 100% real dark chocolate. Tastes so great, you're not going to think they're good for you. Unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. Not sure how they do it, but they maintain amazing macros while tasting like a candy bar. What's even better, they're healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait to get a box. You can always go to Built.com to get your specialty flavors. But also right now, you can walk into your local Walmart or Sam's Club and pick up a 4-bar box if you're at Walmart. Or if you hit Sam's Club, 13-bar box with hit flavors, brownie batter puff, or the churro puff. You can thank me later after you try your first Built Bar. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. With Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan, talking Tyree Wilson to Las Vegas just a moment ago. Curious about Red Raiders headed elsewhere, though, coming up this weekend as we wrap up the NFL draft. Chris, I know there are some that I specifically may be a little bit more interested in just from a story standpoint, or maybe what's been overlooked within the process or not. You know, a guy like Muddy Waters is really interesting to me, but I don't know that he's like the first on the list. I'd say, of course, it doesn't look like he is the first on the list of the next wave, but for different reasons, there's some guys I kind of focus in on. So who's kind of got your attention beyond Tyree Wilson as far as Red Raiders who could be headed for professional opportunity?
Yeah, I think, and I will maintain that I think if there's another Red Raiders name called, the first name that I would expect to hear, and maybe the only other one, I don't know, we'll see, but it's Roderick. I think he really he could be anywhere like just day 3, 5, 5th round to 7th round kind of thing. I mean, it just as we go into the second round today, there's a few. Too fewer running backs, if I can say that right, because Bijan Robinson and the kid from Alabama was picked, and I think which I think raised a lot of eyebrows. Honestly, I think that that position has been devalued. I think people are shocked that they were taken this high, like 8 and 12 overall. I think by Detroit and by the Falcons, the Atlanta Falcons, and so. We'll see, because what you saw a run on receivers at some point, like in the mid-20s, and I think there was 4 that went off the board in a row, and so we'll kind of see what happens with the running back position with SaRodorick. But I think he's a guy that could have his name called. You mentioned Muddy Waters. I think there's a chance. I worry about the speed component. He ran a 4.9. I don't know, and it's a scheme question with him based on what scheme you're running. What do you want him to do? And so that there's kind of a rub there because if you're going to ask him to play certain things, I just don't know if he's fast enough. And if you ask him to play another one, I don't know if he's big enough. So we'll see. But he's just a good football player, I think. And so we'll kind of see what happens. I mean, I think Weston Wright. Could get these are like late round or undrafted free agent type situations. Dimitri Moore, I think Krishan Merriweather. So those are kind of Trey Wolf. Trey Wolf is going to get an opportunity, and again, kickers, not like running backs per se, but drafted kickers, that's just very rare. That you just don't. Sebastian Janikowski years ago, I think the Raiders, speaking of, and Al Davis, he ended up sticking around for a long time, but kickers, punters, and all that, they just don't get picked a ton. So, but that's a big time, free agent, undrafted free agent type deal. I mean, like, look at it. I mean, the Cowboys, they felt like they had an answer at kicker all season until the playoffs, and so they've got a question at that position as well. And so you start looking at people like Trey Wolf and others, and those become as valuable in some ways as like your second and third round pick, depending on how you view it. But there's kind of a group of players right there that could get their name called. And again, some of these guys, careers get extended now because there's so much more football. And if it's not the NFL calling, I mean, the USFL and the XFL they look like they're on fairly solid ground. I guess that could change soon, but there's a lot more opportunity to kind of continue to play if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. And hope to see some of those guys get those kinds of opportunities. And I think some will. I'm curious though, as you hit recruiting trails, what's it sound like from Tim DeRuyter now? Because I think Joey McGuire retweeted a Texas Tech graphic regarding DeRuyter development. And the guy has been busy as far as first-round selections in some recent seasons. So a new one to add, I guess, to the wall for Coach DeRuyter.
This is what you're supposed to do. When you have something like Tyree Wilson happen – and you're in college, athletics or whatever, you have to use it and promote it. You have to use it to your advantage. And what you saw Joey and really all of his staff last night, I mean, so much Twitter activity and the retweeting and just making everybody aware, you can come here, you can play really good defense, and your dreams can come true with a double T on your helmet. I mean, like it can happen for you. And it's up to those guys to tell that story. And, it's funny because, the one guy you didn't really hear from is Tim DeRuyter. Tim doesn't That's what I like about Tim. He's very humble. He is serious about his job. He's very good at his job. He's the last guy that's going to go shout at the mountaintop, hey, look at me, look what I did. That's just not how he rolls. And this is a dude that coached Von Miller to the first round, to Kayvon Thibodeau to the first round, and now Tyree Wilson to the first round. And if you get him in a private conversation, he will tell you about it. And I think it's just but what Tim DeRuyter and what Texas Tech's defense, but specifically Tim DeRuyter, have earned, and I think CJ Ayu has got some of this rubbing off of him too, because he was also at Oregon with Tim DeRuyter. So you can attach the Thibodeau and some things like that.
And in attendance last night, right, in Kansas City, I think.
That's correct. That's correct. So, but what you have is you have a lot of street cred if you're Tim DeRuyter, and I think that is something that goes a long way on the recruiting trail. And I just. I was wrong. I thought he was at Oregon. Like he was at USC and all that stuff. So I can't with CJ Ayu, I can't attach Kayvon Thibodeau there. But I think what Tim will tell you is that CJ does a phenomenal job with development and developing guys. And I think Tim wanted to make sure that CJ Ayu got a ton of credit for like Tyree's situation this past season. But I just think when they told Dylan Spencer, whenever they're recruiting him, that the highly touted kid that was committed to Texas and all those things, I think they told him, this is, I think that they kind of got home with that conversation, and he kind of got it based on, and Tyree hadn't been anywhere near drafted yet. I think people knew that he was going to be, but so, I think Joey's just trying to tell everybody, hey, look, if you want to rush the passer, and you've got big dreams, here's your guy, right now. Like here's the proof. And I think it's quite a feather in your hat, man. I mean, it really is, because those twitchy edge guys are some of the hardest guys to find, and there are very few of them that are elite, and everybody wants them, So,
oh, yeah.
That's just kind of how it works. And Tyree, I think you kind of turned him into that, honestly. I don't know if he was always this. I think the measurables were there, but I just think Tyree made a decision personally. I'm going to clean things up. I'm going to play hard. I'm going to get right. And then I think Tim put him in an unbelievable position to success. And then you have CJ Ayu looking at him day after day, and I just think they squeezed everything they could out of it, and dreams come true.
Yeah, the pterodactyl wingspan set him up for good opportunity, but still had to go make it happen. And obviously with the help of Coach DeRuyter and gang, was able to do that to the tune of a 7th round selection in the first round of the draft. And yeah, man, if you just could circle a position and say, hey, let's really go sell to these guys, quarterback hunters, I'm all right with that.
Zarno Fitch.
You could be deep snapper or something like that. May not be quite as exciting. And even with all due respect to some wide receiver years, I wouldn't mind trying out defender or edge rusher for a few years as well, man, because you were making some hay there. And yeah, as we talked about, and some national outlets have to be reminded of, your most recent first round selection was not a Super Bowl winning quarterback. It was a linebacker in Jordan Brooks. So a couple of defenders now in the first round.
It really bothers me. I know you saw the same thing I did.
Yeah.
It's like, why does, pick number 27 is in the first round. And hey, man, Jordan Brooks had like 161 tackles last year. I think that may have led the NFL or was in the top 5, but put some respect on his name, people. I mean, like, come on. I mean, it's not hard. I mean, he's a baller, man.
Yeah.
And he was phenomenal here. And
yep.
yeah, and he played at Texas Tech the entire time. And anyway, I just, that kind of stuff bothers me, because there was very clearly this Texas Tech stigma attached to Tyree. And that bugged me too. But these are the kinds of things that you need to keep, and it's people like around here that are in Lubbock and cover Texas Tech and all that. It's up to, kind of the total to kind of tell that. I mean,
well, Chris, there are so many Texas Tech fans, I think, that haven't even kind of realized over the last half decade, going back to Keith Patterson and into this new era with Tim DeRuyter, that the defense has been at the wheel for better or worse, your defense has been the strongest aspect of your team. And not to suggest it was always pretty, and maybe that speaks very poorly of some offenses. I don't know. But it's been a defensively kind of dominated football conversation, again, for better or worse, last handful of years. And some that are out there, every day discussing tech sports on the internet haven't even quite come to grasp with that. So I'm not saying it's like removed a stigma and all of a sudden you are Defender U, but things have changed as far as the balance, I guess, or the scales to a degree. I know you've seen the same thing.
Yeah, I think again you're fighting that perception from so many years, and again, to be fair, well-earned perception of porous defense. Even going back to when Mahomes was here, which wasn't too long ago, when you were really, really bad. But I think Keith did a phenomenal job of changing the mindset. Who's now the head coach at Abilene Christian, and to basically saying, you matter here, even though you play defense here, like you matter, like, and this, your side of the ball is going to matter. And I think that, that you have to chip away at that. And that's not something that changes overnight. It's, first of all, you have to have some success. That's why that we've talked about it often, but that's why that bowl game in Memphis, because I think, and I get it, Mississippi State was missing some guys, but I just think your defense just was front and center. And for 60 minutes, you just said, not tonight. And Tyree was right there. But, Keith was, with kind of tears in his eyes after that game, a really proud dad of that group, because it's like they had finally like come full circle. And
you just went nature boy on me there with a tear in my eye.
That's right. That's right. I didn't intend to do that, but he was emotional.
Hey,
you got guys like Colin Schooler and Rico Jeffers and Tyree Wilson. These guys are all playing professional football right now.
Oh yeah. Hey, and remember that time in the middle of that well-earned defensive stigma? Remember that time when you went and won like 11 games, beat the number one team in the country? Remember what you did that year? You played defense. Remember guys like Colby Whitlock? Remember McKenna Dixon, Brandon Williams? Remember? You remember? Yeah, so never a bad idea to maybe shore up what you're doing on the defensive side of the football and make an investment. And that's happened in some recent years with some payoff. Hopefully it continues to happen. We'll have plenty more on the next wave. On the other side of completing this draft experience, we will get next week to some of those Red Raiders got an early eye on as far as NFL prospects are concerned.
And before we leave, I feel like we would both be remiss by not mentioning a couple of things as it relates as we go back to the beginning of this whole conversation about the draft and Tyree.
Yeah.
The suit, well done, kid. I mean, it was on point. He's popping that thing open. There's a double T right in there. So he's showing respect. I think a lot of people love the sunglasses all bigger in Texas than in other states. So he kind of had that thing going. But
I got to say with the glasses, Eric Burkhart missed a marketing opportunity. That's a billboard on that guy's face. You maybe could have plastered Pedro.
I thought he was with Rock Nation. I thought he was.
Oh, is he? I thought I saw Burkhart on the couch with him.
Oh no, I think not unless Burkhart now works for Rock Nation. Maybe that is.
Chilling.
I need to follow up on that. But I just thought, the look was awesome, because it's something we'll all remember. You can either say looks really, really cool, or hey, it looked like drapes, or the couch.
Well,
I don't know.
Both those things can be true, Chris.
But I thought it was on point, and only you and I couldn't have pulled it off. Tyree nailed it, and the hug,
challenge accepted.
Yeah, or the suplex, the bear hug that he gives Roger Goodell. I'd be willing to bet you that's maybe the only time Roger Goodell has been picked up off the ground in the draft ever before. And I thought it was just it was on brand, man. That's who Tyree is.
On brand.
Yeah. He's not going to go up and like have this lengthy, in-depth conversation with you. He's just going to go up and be like, smile real big and like pick you up off your feet and lift you as high as he wants to, which is what he did with the NFL commissioner. And I thought people loved it. It was like on brand, man. It was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, and shout out to Eric Burkhart, co-head of Rock Nation's football division.
There you go. Okay, see?
As of July 2022.
Okay. A year ago.
He's
Yeah,
officing
Texas
right
Tech
next
grad.
to Beanie Siegel, I think.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, we're going to set that to the side for just a moment. Wrap it up next with a phrase you've never heard before. Ask Level, a question you did, and we're getting to it. Dead ahead on Locked On Texas Tech. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. First listen every day. If you're in that category, muchas gracias. Prayer hands to you. If you're listening on the podcast and not seeing it on YouTube, thanks for being out there every day. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't so far so you never miss an episode. Wrapping it up today, Chris, with something I could only bring to you as I am perusing the YouTube comments as often as possible for signs of intellect, brilliance, and wonder. And the bucket is full. So thank you all who are there daily in the YouTube comments as well. But a question like this, sometimes I can provide like a guess at an answer or a kind of elementary answer to these folks. And I don't even run this up the line to you. I'm not bothering you with this kind of stuff. I know your time is precious. But something like this, I'm like, I don't know. So I figured I'd do my man Frank Morgan a solid and bring the question to you. So feel free anytime, YouTube comments, lodge a complaint, lodge a question. Those are the options. And we might just run them up the line to Chris Level. So we're doing this one for our guy Frank out there today who would like some clarification on something, Chris. He says in part, it regards the obligation by the team to keep a transfer. Now, I think his question is in a basketball context. So if we need to separate football, basketball, or if some things are similar, you can let us know. But he says, regarding the obligation by the team to keep a transfer, previously all players got one-year scholarships renewable by the team each year. That way a coach could cut the team each year if he wanted just by not renewing the scholarship. Last August, the NCAA changed the rules for transfers only, not incoming freshmen. He says, the way I understand it, when a player transfers in, the school must honor the scholarship until the player graduates or transfers again. It's not just year to year any longer. In other words, if guys wanted to stay, they can, and Tech couldn't cut the scholarship. They have to honor it if the player wants. So he's basically asking for clarification or verification. Can you let us know if he's on the right path, where he's going right, maybe where he's going wrong?
Well, and if we even dig in a little deeper, he's specifically asking about Demarion Williams and Kerwin Walton. Am I misunderstanding?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
that's kind of who you're hinting at. I mean, or you're describing their situations. How about that?
Yes.
I will say this. I think he's right on the rules. I think that is the intent. I think, but I guess I have a hard time telling you that this is the rule and there's just no gray area there at all, because the whole thing, I mean, and we're talking about this days after The Athletic is sitting here written about Colorado football and a guy walking to the Deion Sanders' office and his position coach telling him, hey man, you're going to get cut today, bud. Right. I mean, and it's like 37 of your friends are gonna have the same fate. I mean, and so look,
like Lord of the Flies, man.
Yeah, we've talked about the waiver part. I just think, look, in some ways, Grant McCasland, I need to be careful of how I word it. He may love that those two kids are going to stay here. He may feel, hey man, I'm stuck with these two. I really don't know which is true. I just refuse to believe though that if they don't want to be here, they could go play somewhere else and be eligible immediately based on the waiver process that we described earlier, based on how Mark Adams was removed and all that stuff. It was very public, and I think. There's just no way. I get what the way that the rule was intended. However, there are exceptions. This would clearly be one. But they may have nowhere else to go. They may want to stay here. I don't know if Grant would feel comfortable like forcing them out, or so there's some different dynamics. But I do think as the letter of the law, the way the rule states, I think you are accurate. Okay, so I want to make that clear. I guess I just kind of roll my eyes a bit when you start talking about people following rules these days, because there's so many exceptions. There's so much gray area. There's people that aren't following the rules.
It's college sports, baby.
Exactly.
Come on. There's always gray area.
Yeah. Hey, you're not supposed to talk to somebody before they get in the portal. That's tampering. Come on, man.
Well, Chris,
it's
it's kind of like just making a situation so untenable that you're kind of forced into making a decision, but then the person that made the situation untenable can say, well, I never made them make that call.
Right.
Canada. I think there's still ways, but it is kind of interesting that change took place, and I'm not even sure how I feel about it. I don't know that I like it all that much, because I don't mind some year-to-year accountability as far as, hey, are you living up to your end of the bargain? Or are we living up to our, I don't just assume it's all like really callous, like, oh, this is a great guy and he's getting a great education and damn it, he's trying really hard, but we want to get rid of him. I don't assume they're all like that. I mean, there may be some, but I don't know that I minded year to year. What do you think about the change, or just more of a commitment possibly?
I would say that, you kind of lightly follow the NBA like I do. And we all know that around July 1 or July 4th, there's a sweet spot there whenever free agency opens up, and there's this 48-hour window whenever right before the free agency opens up, and you kind of start to hear rumblings of deals, and then you start to see contracts agreed to and trades consummated and all these different things for the next 2 days. And if you're kind of even pay attention to the NBA, or you have a favorite team, you're kind of glued in. How much cap space do I got? All this stuff. My opinion is that, and I've seen people suggest this, and I think this is the point, and I think this is what you were kind of talking about. You like the movement. I kind of wish college basketball would embrace, because there's a lot of pushback on this from the public. Oh, this is crazy. Everybody's switching it up. In some ways, I think if you embrace it as a sport, and if you could ever figure out how to kind of get your arms around trying to cover all of it, because it's massive player movement, massive, and it's not concentrated into a short time frame. It's a bit more spread out. But if they could ever figure out that part of it, and then figure out a way to market it or pitch it or kind of embrace that part, I think it would be, because look at we're dealing with the NFL draft on TV for the next 3 days. There are, I think, estimates that 600,000 people will attend that NFL draft. 10 million plus will watch it.
Yeah.
It makes the NFL a good, I think they're talking about it makes downtown Kansas City like somewhere between $100 and $150 million off of the 3 days. It pumps that much money into their economy. So, and I'm not ever saying you could have something like that with like the college basketball part of it, but if you could figure out a way to embrace the movement and all that stuff, I think there's it could be kind of fun in some ways. It's just, but it's outside the box. It's not the way it's gone. And so people are like, I hate it. I don't like it.
I know. I knew where you were going with that. And I was thinking, this is the most diabolical scheme of all. Oh, you think we're going to rein it in? Hell no, we're going to market it.
Yeah. I mean, come on. That's
you're right.
Yeah. So
I don't know if you're right. I can just say you're not wrong. All right, man. Enjoyed the entire week with you. All the insight. Appreciate the time as always, and looking forward to getting back after it. Coming up on Monday, Chris. Thanks again, and have a great weekend.
Cowan, you are the best, my man. Enjoyed it. Keep hope alive, everybody. Have a good weekend. Stay out of that West Texas wind on this lovely Friday. It's a bit brisk out there.
A bit brisk.
Yes. Hopefully, some more Red Raiders get picked over the weekend, and we'll talk to you early next week.
Yeah, and best of luck to your respective NFL loyalties, that they get better and not worse, because some will do some of either this weekend. There's no question about that. And be sure to check out any of our many quality Locked On NFL broadcasts. Cowboys, Texans. That could be an interesting episode if I'm a Locked On Texans host coming up on the other side. So check in there, or with any of your other favorites. on the Locked On Podcast Network. A lot of great options out there. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us once again, and we'll see you for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.